Before breaking into films, he played in bands and worked in vaudeville, which helped him develop a commanding stage presence and an ease in front of audiences that would later become a hallmark of his acting. MacMurray's film career began in the early 1930s when he signed with Paramount Pictures. His breakthrough came with the 1935 film The Gilded Lily, in which he starred opposite Claudette Colbert. The film's success catapulted him to stardom and established him as a leading man with a charming everyman quality that resonated with Depression-era audiences. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, he appeared in a series of popular films, including Alice Adams, 1935, with Katharine Hepburn, Hands Across the Table, 1935, and True Confession, 1937, with Carole Lombard. His pairing with top actresses and his easygoing yet confident screen presence made him a favorite among both directors and the public. One of his most acclaimed and memorable roles came in 1944, when he took a dramatic turn in Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity. Playing Walter Neff, an insurance salesman lured into a murder plot, MacMurray stunned audiences with his dark, complex portrayal of a man torn between passion and conscience. The film remains a landmark in the film noir genre, and his performance is still considered one of the finest of his career. This role demonstrated his dramatic range and disproved the notion that he was suited only for light, comedic fare. Although he had proven himself in dramatic roles, MacMurray was also deeply admired for his work in comedies and family films. In the 1950s and 60s, he starred in several popular Disney films, including The Shaggy Dog, 1959, The Absent-Minded Professor, 1961, and its sequel, Son of Flubber, 1963. These roles showcased his knack for physical comedy and his ability to play lovable, bumbling characters without losing his dignity. His association with Walt Disney Studios further cemented his image as a wholesome and trustworthy screen presence. Perhaps his most iconic role, particularly for television audiences, was as widowed father Steve Douglas in the long-running sitcom My Three Sons, 1960-1972. Over the course of the show's 12 seasons, MacMurray portrayed the wise and steady patriarch of a household of boys, guiding them through life's challenges with patience, humor, and love. His portrayal struck a chord with American families during a time of cultural change, offering a portrait of stable fatherhood and traditional values that resonated deeply with viewers. In the early 1970s, MacMurray appeared in commercials for the Greyhound Lines Bus Company. In 1979, he appeared in a series of commercials for the Korean Chisunbop math calculation program. MacMurray's final film was The Swarm, co-starring Michael Caine, Olivia de Havilland, and Henry Fonda. The actor, semi-retired at this point, was called back for one last film by director Irwin Allen, entitled Fire. However, his diagnosis of throat cancer caused him to pull out. Allen then offered him the small role, for a total of 2 days on set, of a pharmacist in The Swarm. MacMurray told reporters that he didn't really miss it. "A lot of actors go crazy if they aren't working, but I guess I'm a little lazy." He successfully underwent treatment for his cancer during the production. Fred MacMurray, a celebrated Hollywood actor known for his versatility in both comedic and dramatic roles, was married twice over the course of his life, and each union marked a significant chapter in his personal journey. His first marriage was to Lillian "Lily" Lamont, whose legal name was Lillian Wayme Honor MacMurray. Born in 1908, Lily was a quietly elegant and supportive presence in MacMurray's life. The couple met in the 1930s during the height of MacMurray's early film career, and they married in 1936. At the time, MacMurray was establishing himself as a leading man in films such as The Trail of the Lonesome Pine and Hands Across the Table, and Lily, though not part of the film industry, became his steadfast companion, offering him emotional stability and grounding him amid the chaos of Hollywood's golden age. Together, Fred and Lily adopted 2 children, a daughter, Susan, and a son, Robert. The couple were known for their strong family values, and despite the glitz and pressures of the film world, they maintained a relatively private and traditional household. They resided on a large ranch in the San Fernando Valley, far from the limelight of Los Angeles, where MacMurray would later become a respected cattle rancher in his spare time. Lily's health, however, began to decline in the early 1950s, and she sadly passed away in 1953 after a long battle with a chronic illness. Her death left MacMurray heartbroken, and for a time he withdrew from public life to mourn and care for his young children. After several years of solitude and focusing on his family, MacMurray eventually found love again with actress and former musical star June Haver. Haver, known as the Pocket Grable due to her resemblance to Betty Grable, had been a prominent figure in 1940s musicals produced by 20th Century Fox, starring in such films as Irish Eyes Are Smiling and The Dolly Sisters. Born in 1926, Haver was nearly 2 decades younger than MacMurray and had, at one point, retired from acting with the intention of becoming a nun. However, her time in the convent was brief, and she returned to secular life shortly before meeting MacMurray. The two began dating quietly, with their romance blossoming in the mid-1950s, and they were married on June 28, 1954, in a private ceremony attended by close friends and family. Their union was one of Hollywood's most enduring, lasting over 4 decades, until MacMurray's death in 1991. Together, Fred and June adopted twin daughters, Kate and Lori, and continued to emphasize family life over Hollywood glamour. They split their time between their Brentwood home in Los Angeles and their working ranch in Healdsburg, California, where MacMurray cultivated grapes and raised livestock. June Haver, who retired from acting after marrying MacMurray, became a devoted wife and mother, stepping gracefully out of the limelight to support her husband's career and manage their home life. She was by his side through his later career, which included his iconic role in the long-running sitcom My 3 Sons, as well as during his declining health in the 1980s due to leukemia. Haver remained a widow for 14 years after Fred MacMurray's death, passing away in 2005. Fred MacMurray's 2 marriages reflected the quieter, more grounded side of a man who, despite his fame, valued family, stability, and long-term commitment. Both Lillian Lamont and June Haver played pivotal roles in shaping his personal happiness and supporting his success behind the scenes, contributing to the enduring legacy of one of Hollywood's most respected and beloved actors. Fred MacMurray was not only a celebrated actor, but also a remarkably savvy and prolific businessman whose financial acumen often went unnoticed behind his Hollywood charm. In the 1940s, a time when most actors struggled to secure their futures beyond the silver screen, MacMurray was earning an impressive income, frequently bringing in over $400,000 annually, a staggering sum for the era that positioned him comfortably among the wealthiest entertainers of his time. In 1941, demonstrating a visionary approach to both business and lifestyle, MacMurray invested in a sprawling 1,750-acre estate nestled in the picturesque Russian River Valley of Northern California, which he named MacMurray Ranch. This vast property was far more than just a retreat. It was a vibrant, self-sustaining agricultural haven. On this ranch, MacMurray cultivated a diverse array of crops, prunes, apples, and alfalfa among them, while also raising prize-winning Aberdeen Angus cattle, a testament to his dedication and keen interest in farming and ranching. Beyond his agricultural pursuits, he immersed himself in a variety of rustic pastimes that reflected his grounded personality. Watercolor painting captured the serene landscapes. Fly fishing offered peaceful solitude in nature, and skeet shooting provided a spirited challenge. MacMurray's deep respect for the land and its agricultural heritage was evident not only during his lifetime, but in his foresight for its future. After his passing, the ranch was sold in 1996 to the renowned Gallo family, who transformed the land by planting vineyards that now produce acclaimed wines proudly bearing the MacMurray Ranch label. This continuation of the property's legacy beautifully marries MacMurray's original agricultural spirit with Sonoma County's vibrant wine culture. Remarkably, one of MacMurray's own children still calls the ranch home, residing in a charming cabin built by their father and actively participating in the thriving wine community, a living tribute to the family's enduring connection to the land. MacMurray's business savvy extended beyond agriculture. In 1944, leveraging profits from his hit film Double Indemnity, he purchased the Bryson Apartment Hotel in Los Angeles' Westlake neighborhood for $600,000. A bold investment that signaled his prudent approach to wealth management. His real estate portfolio grew to include co-ownership of 3 additional apartment buildings, a clear indication of his steady and methodical strategy toward financial security. Known for his cautious and frugal lifestyle, MacMurray dedicated the bulk of his earnings to diverse investments, including a knitting mill, partial ownership of a golf and tennis club, and a cold storage business. Moreover, he was a shrewd negotiator in Hollywood, famously insisting on a percentage of the gross receipts from films in which he starred, an uncommon practice at the time that underscored his business acumen. In 1945, MacMurray teamed up with former actor Leslie Fenton to form the production company Mutual Pictures, an ambitious move into the world of filmmaking beyond acting. Although their collaboration yielded just one film, Pardon My Past, which enjoyed moderate success, it illustrated MacMurray's desire to diversify his career and take control of his creative output. Despite widespread rumors and public fascination with his wealth, sometimes speculated to rival that of legendary billionaires like Doris Duke and the Aga Khan, MacMurray remained modest about his fortune. A 1977 profile dispelled these myths, revealing that if he sold all his assets, his net worth was estimated between $3 million and $4 million, a substantial but not astronomical sum. This modest figure, MacMurray explained, was largely a product of his lifelong frugality and careful management rather than ostentatious extravagance. When beloved actor Fred MacMurray passed away in 1991, the Hollywood community and his fans mourned the loss of a quiet, steadfast performer who had built an enduring legacy of wholesome everyman roles. His funeral was a respectful and intimate affair, attended by family, friends, and colleagues who had shared the screen and a sense of decency with the famously private star. Yet amidst the familiar faces was one quietly standing figure that sparked surprise and hushed curiosity among those present: Tommy Kirk. Kirk's presence at the service was not just unexpected. It was almost unimaginable to many in attendance, given the complicated and painful history he had endured in the shadow of Disney, Hollywood, and societal prejudice. Tommy Kirk had once been a rising star at Walt Disney Studios in the late 1950s and early 1960s, beloved by audiences for his boyish charm and standout performances in hits like Old Yeller, The Shaggy Dog, and The Misadventures of Merlin Jones. He had often been cast alongside Fred MacMurray, most notably in The Shaggy Dog and Bon Voyage, where their chemistry as father and son provided a comforting ideal of mid-century American family life. However, Kirk's promising career was abruptly derailed when he was fired by Disney after executives discovered he was gay, a revelation that in the early 1960s effectively ended any hope of continuing his upward trajectory in mainstream family films. In a time when homosexuality was still considered taboo, even career-ending, Kirk was cast out of the Hollywood spotlight, relegated to lesser roles, and eventually retreating from the industry altogether. The rejection he experienced was not just professional. It was deeply personal. The very industry that had once embraced his youth and talent turned away with indifference or quiet disdain, and few of his former colleagues publicly defended or reached out to him. That is what made Kirk's appearance at Fred MacMurray's funeral so quietly extraordinary. Though many might have assumed the two had drifted apart following Kirk's fall from grace, the truth was more complex. Fred MacMurray, known for his conservative demeanor and reserved personality, was not someone often associated with bold stances or public advocacy. But those who knew him well said he was a man of deep personal loyalty and compassion, values he kept close to the chest, away from headlines. While MacMurray never made public statements about Kirk's dismissal or the treatment of gay actors in Hollywood, insiders later suggested he remained privately sympathetic and never turned his back on his young co-star. Kirk himself would later speak in interviews about how few people in the business stood by him after his career collapsed. But MacMurray, he noted, never treated him with judgment or cruelty. On set, MacMurray had always been professional, kind, and quietly protective, never mocking, never distant. That humanity, subtle though it may have seemed at the time, left a lasting impression on the younger actor, who had felt increasingly isolated and betrayed by the industry. So when Kirk walked into the funeral that day, older and weathered but composed, it wasn't for spectacle. It was a private, heartfelt gesture of respect for a man who had once offered him a sense of dignity in a world that had otherwise denied him that simple kindness. Some attendees recognized Kirk and exchanged surprised glances, quietly murmuring to each other. Others simply watched as he stood near the back, not seeking attention, not engaging in small talk, just offering his silent goodbye to someone who had mattered to him in ways few understood. Tommy Kirk's presence at Fred MacMurray's funeral was a poignant reminder that beneath the surface of Hollywood's glossy image were very real relationships. Some forged in decency and mutual respect, even if never publicly acknowledged. For Kirk, it was not just the funeral of a co-star. It was the farewell to one of the rare individuals who, in a deeply judgmental era, had shown him something close to quiet acceptance. It may have been a footnote in the broader narrative of MacMurray's life, but for those who noticed, and for Kirk himself, it meant far more. It was a silent, dignified affirmation that, even in the shadows of a repressive time, human decency could persist. Fred MacMurray was a lifelong heavy smoker, a habit that unfortunately took a significant toll on his health over the years. Beginning early in his adult life, MacMurray was known to smoke heavily, often chain-smoking cigarettes both on and off the sets of his many film and television projects. This intense and prolonged exposure to tobacco contributed to serious health consequences as he aged. In the late 1970s, MacMurray was diagnosed with throat cancer, a grim diagnosis that was all too common among heavy smokers of his generation. The cancer treatment he underwent was difficult and taxing, but MacMurray's resilience helped him through this challenging period. However, despite initial treatment efforts, the throat cancer recurred in 1987, indicating the persistent and aggressive nature of the disease. This recurrence posed a renewed threat to his health and required further medical intervention. In addition to his battle with cancer, Fred MacMurray faced another serious health crisis at the end of 1988. In December of that year, he suffered a severe stroke that had devastating effects on his physical capabilities. The stroke resulted in paralysis on the right side of his body, severely limiting his mobility and independence. Moreover, the stroke affected his speech, impairing his ability to communicate clearly. For a man who had been a charismatic actor and a vibrant presence in the public eye, this was a particularly challenging blow. Nevertheless, MacMurray demonstrated remarkable determination and strength during his recovery process. Through extensive and dedicated therapy, including physical rehabilitation and speech therapy, he was able to regain a significant portion of his lost functions. Reports suggest that MacMurray made an impressive 90% recovery from the stroke, allowing him to maintain a better quality of life despite the setbacks. Tragically, In addition to throat cancer and the stroke, Fred MacMurray also battled leukemia for more than a decade. This prolonged struggle with leukemia, a type of blood cancer, further weakened his health and added to the medical challenges he faced. Leukemia is known for its chronic and debilitating effects on the immune system, making patients more vulnerable to infections and other complications. Ultimately, after a long and courageous fight against multiple serious illnesses, MacMurray passed away on November 5, 1991. The immediate cause of death was pneumonia, a severe lung infection that often proves fatal in individuals with compromised immune systems or pre-existing health conditions. His death occurred in Santa Monica, California, a city known for its ties to many Hollywood stars. MacMurray's passing marked the end of a remarkable life and career, but his legacy continues to live on through the many memorable films and television shows he left behind.